Hello, long time no see. It's Olivia, and I wanted to talk to you today about my recent reads in February. The eagle-eyed observer will notice that I may be in a different recording location, that I'm in a new house, and judging by the fact that I'm like sweating, also in a new hemisphere. So I finally moved to Australia. I've been here since the end of January, and I have loved everything about it so far. The fact that I moved and all of my stuff, all of my books are on a boat and will not be here for a couple more months means that basically like my house is in, like there's nothing in this room of the house. All of the books that I'm going to talk about are physical books, almost all of them from the library. I have bought one new book since I've been here, but I also don't have my computer, so I'm just gonna hope that I can take this, have no need for editing at all, but we're going very bare bones here because I have nothing except for permanent residency in Australia, and that's all I've wanted this whole time. So without further ado, let me talk about the books. I did read some audiobooks and ebooks this month, but they were all like 2-3 star reads, so I'm not gonna bother talking about them. I don't really want to talk about them, and now I don't have to edit in little pictures of audiobooks, ebooks covers. The first, I don't know what order I finished these in. I read Top End Girl by Miranda Tapsell, which is a memoir about Miranda Tapsell, who's an Australian actress. I was familiar with her from The Sapphires, and I actually saw Top End Wedding, which is a movie that she wrote and starred in, and then is also in The Dry, the Jane Harper adapted movie adaptation of the Jane Harper book. The memoir, I would recommend this for people who are already like fans of hers. It talks a bit about like being an actress, an Australian actress, and kind of juxtaposes it to the world of acting, especially like for film, is more so based in Hollywood. So how she has, you know, made it as a working actress in Australia and really thrived, and a very beloved actress. And so it was interesting learning more about like how she came into film acting from stage acting, her experiences in acting school, the role that race played and how she was treated during school, the opportunities that were allowed to her, and you know, a lot of the book is about the making of Top End Wedding and how meaningful that was to be able to tell the stories that she wanted to tell, and to be able to like set a rom-com in the Northern Territory where she's from. And yeah, so it was interesting, but it's not like one of those memoirs that you're like, it's not gonna win over people who aren't reading memoirs already. But if you're interested in acting and in Australian cinema, then yeah, definitely enjoyable. The book that I bought to be my beach read, my first vacation here was to Port Macquarie, which is north of Newcastle on the eastern coast of New South Wales. So I guess the only coast of New South Wales, there's not whatever. My beach read was The Next Big Thing, which had just come out by James Colley, who is actually the husband of Miranda Tapsell. So I learned more about their love story in here. You know, it was like interesting to have read their love story and then like also read a rom-com that he wrote. The Next Big Thing is about a boy named Norman, or a boy named Norm who lives in a small town named Norman, and his best friend Ella. Ella wants to move away to go to university. Norm wants to save Norman from being incorporated into a bigger nearby city, and has devised a plan to save the city of Norman from being wiped off the map by building a big thing. So if you're not familiar with big things of Australia, there are things like the big merino, the big pineapple, the big prawn, the big banana. The big banana was the first one in Coffs Harbour. Locally to me, we have the big golden guitar in Tamworth. But they're just, it's kind of silly. It's kind of like cheeky to like just build a big thing. We have them in the US too, but we don't, we just build a lot of big things in the US and don't make a big deal about it. You know, like the statue of Bucky outside of a Bucky's is bigger than some of the big things of Australia. But his idea for a big thing is explored throughout the book, that you don't know what the big thing that he's decided to build. They don't know what they're building. They decide to build a big thing before they know what they want to build a big thing of. I was very pleased with the reveal of what the big thing is. But this book it's a rom-com, and there is, you know, a very obvious relationship that's going to form throughout this book between Norm and Ella. They've been best friends since childhood. They have, you know, they're both kind of exploring their past, and both have their journey of self-discovery and development throughout the book. So it's like refreshing and like in that way that there's like real development. But I would judge it more as like, it's more of like a comedic, you know, character development kind of book. There's not really a lot of romance. You know, like if you're a romance only reader, I don't know if they would like a book like this. I'm not a romance reader, definitely not a romance only reader, and I found it enjoyable. But I think that it's probably a best fit for someone who is like interested in the quirks of Australiana, that there's a lot of exploration of like being from a regional town, what that's like, because so much like it's, you know, something, I think like over 90% of Australians live, you know, along the coast somewhere in one of the capital cities, or all on the coast, except for Hobart. But what was I gonna say? That like, yeah, okay, so everyone lives along the coast, and so this is more inland. It kind of it talks about like the regional experience, and as someone who lives regionally, although not in as small of a city as Norman, I found that, you know, very familiar. The next book I want to talk about is Search History by Amy Taylor. This book follows a girl who has just moved from Perth to Melbourne, and her experiences online dating, trying to move on in her life, moving away from a place where she maybe, you know, felt stuck, and in Melbourne is now facing new difficulties with connecting, that maybe your problems don't go away just because you've moved. And she forms this relationship with someone that she meets in person, and is trying to really have that connection, but can't help but to look him up online, and finds out that his previous girlfriend tragically and suddenly died, and she doesn't want to tell him, you know, I looked you up and I found this out about your girlfriend, and now this paints a whole different set of expectations on, you know, what you might be seeking from this relationship. And so it's about her like discovering more about his previous girlfriend and more about him, and then her experiences developing in a new city as well. I really enjoyed this one. It really surprised me because this cover is not really giving what the text is giving. The cover, I mean, I don't even know what I would think that looks like. It kind of looks like a cozy mystery, but it's definitely not. It's more so of like the Sally Rooney, something like, kind of reminded me of Exciting Times, and I can't remember the author's name right now, another Irish book, and it has a lot to say, I think, about not personalizing and like over intellectualizing every hurt of a relationship, and that was really refreshing to read, that it was not so single-minded and like what it wanted to say about like the politics of relationships. So yeah, really recommend this one. This month I also read Chetna Maroo's Western Lane. I picked this up from the library because it was short, Man Booker Prize, or just Booker Prize longlisted from last year. I'd heard good things about it on Bookstagram, but otherwise really didn't know anything about it. It's about these sisters and their father who are all squash players, and I didn't really know anything about squash, and know a lot more now than I did. And it was really interesting the way that this family, who have just lost the mother of the family, are each dealing with grief in their own way. The pace of the book is gearing up towards our main character having to, or getting to, enter a squash tournament, and so you are building towards this like real event while also processing through grief, and just that each character was written in a way where there was subtleties or very obvious things that were going on with how they were processing their grief. And so it was an interesting family story in that way, but I liked it. And if you think that premise sounds interesting, then I think that you'll like it. My top book of the month was West Girls by Laura Elizabeth Woollett, which was recently longlisted for the Stella Prize, which I'm planning on trying to read the whole long list, so good luck to me in that venture. West Girls is so beautiful and inventive in how the story is told, mostly about this character Luna Lewis, who is white but is her stepmother is not, the people that she's interacting with are not. Her stepmother is Indonesian, and she's perceived as not being white whenever she's trying to get into modeling, and she just goes with it. And that sounds like a very straightforward story about like this white character who is, you know, pretending to be Asian for her benefit of, you know, she goes forward with like a mysterious, you know, no one, she never says what her nationality is, but just kind of lets people believe what they want to believe in ways that it benefits her. But it tells all of the women in this book, or all the characters, are from Western Australia, from Perth, from regional areas. Whenever you read reviews of this online, like, I felt so sorry for these people. They thought it was a short story collection because of how it jumps around with point of view. So like some of the chapters are in first person, some are in third person, and it always seems like it's following a different character, but all of the stories interweave, and they somehow have something to do with like one of the characters will link to a character in ways that are like very subtle sometimes, but like they always link to another of the chapters. Is that there will be a standalone chapter, like this German backpacker who is working as a barmaid in regional Western Australia. That's like an isolated story, but you get see that story referenced in a future chapter. So it's really interesting, really incredibly crafted. I loved it. The relationships between the characters is really just like complicated and interesting. I love how complicated this book allowed itself to be, how dark it allowed itself to be, and really just, I think that this is gonna be one of my top books of the year, because I was like in awe at the end of like how all of it worked together, and it really did resonate like emotionally with me. So I'm interested to see how it does in the Stella Prize. So yeah, definitely recommend that one. And the last book I'm going to talk about today is Friends in Dark Shapes by Kavita Bedford, which I actually finished this month. March has just started, but I need to return to the library because someone else has a hold on it. This is about a group of characters who live in a share house in Redfern and Sydney, and it follows the year in a life of this character who has just lost, and she's just lost her father, and is like processing that grief and across the course of the year. And so you get to see how each of these characters develop, how the friends, roommates really in the share house, like how they come together sometimes, how they diverge sometimes. I really liked just spending time with this main character and the conversations that they were allowed to have she's like a journalist and is, you know, interviewing characters that she meets in Sydney, and a lot about her being a second generation immigrant, her second generation identity, and the complications of living in a share house, which was really interesting to me. Just the ways that you feel insecure in the living space, in terms of Sydney being a very hard like rental market, and what people owe to each other living with each other, which I've never lived with a stranger before, or someone that I was, you know, not close to. And so that was really interesting, and a lot about how the city that you live in is tied to your identity, and feeling like, as much as like it was hard to live in Sydney sometimes, that maybe she couldn't live without it. So yeah, really like that one too. They were all like really easy reads, and I had a really good reading month. I really enjoyed being here, and I'm thinking about like maybe recording like kind of my first impressions of living in Australia. Yeah, so let me know what you've been reading. Let me know if you have any questions about moving, or yeah, anything at all. It's nice to be back, and I'll talk to you again soon.